There used to be a bigger distinction between them because the browsers and mobile devices. So what I was sort of talking about the failure and the promise of the mobile internet, it was sort of the original promise the carriers had, which was they were going to bring the internet to mobile devices. They failed at that. They came up with web browser standards, which were very limiting. They came up with arcane, limited versions of HTML. So while the whole world is moving to XHTML and more robust versions of browsers, these guys focused on a limited set. Turns out the iPhone proves what you can do on a mobile device and the internet and a mobile phone, right? So I think the key thing you're going to start to see is Webkit-like full HTML and XML 2.0e type web browsers appearing in phones. They're now in all the Series 60 mobile phones that are shipping, the iPhone, Android, all of these have very robust Webkit-based web browsers. And I think basically you'll start to see this distinction between special purpose content for a mobile internet versus the regular internet. That distinction is going to go away. That doesn't mean websites won't format their content so that they know if it's going to be on a small screen, they'll do smart things. Even Google does that. If you go to google.com and Gmail from your iPhone, you'll see that we detect it's an iPhone and we repurpose the content for a better experience on that device. So developers should think about that and think about repurposing some of their content, but you can do that hopefully within the constraints of a very powerful web browser for a lot of phones. The great thing about Android is you can build any type of phone on it. So as I mentioned, if you don't have a data plan, you still probably, if your phone does have a little camera in it or some other device, you probably still want to have good applications or even good games or other things that could be available through side loading or through some other way you put on that device or be prepackaged with that device. So Android, the first phones will probably be focused on very powerful internet-connected mobile devices, but it is a completely open mobile stack. So if you're a hardware OEM and you're trying to reduce the cost that it takes to manufacture your mobile phones, and you have one powerful operating system that can scale your range from sort of low-end feature phones all the way up to the most powerful smartphones simply by stripping elements out or reducing the capabilities, that's great. Now hopefully, and I think you'll start to see this. Again, I talked about one-screen and two-screen economies. I do believe in many parts of the world you'll start to see carriers start to offer more affordable data plans. You're already seeing that in the US. They've announced, everybody's announced all-you-can-eat data plans. The price is going to go up on those or down. Probably with competition, the price is going to start going down on those. So I do think you're going to start to see a prevalence of data plans across some broader variety of handsets as well. So our handset alliance, some of the people in that alliance just weren't bringing software expertise, but a large number of the companies actually were companies with software expertise. So Packet Video contributed video codecs, Nuance contributed speech recognition, we contributions for MIDI sequencers. So probably 30% to 40% of the OHA members were actually coming in with code, helping us in the early design phase, getting snapshots of the initial Android tree, working with us on the design, on the integration of their components. And so it was a collaborative effort between a number of those parties. The carriers, we also talked to them early on about the architecture, what the system looked like, and took their feedback on issues like security and other components of the platform. Chip manufacturers and handset OEMs, a lot of them have helped us at lower levels of the stacks, which things such as the telephony interfaces. So, I mean, everybody was sort of helping. It was a very collaborative effort. It wasn't, Google had reference design, and we were effectively lead architect, if you want to consider that, because we're not building this as an open community development effort. We're building this as a well-engineered design system with strong design leadership, with clear knowledge of what pieces we need that are best in class, bringing together best in class developers, and then building that system. So it was very much a collaborative effort on the development side. The second half of the question tickled my brain. Should be more presidential and just jotting down notes as people are asking the questions.
How much of the stack is open?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, right. So the road mapping process, I mean, once we open source this, if you look at any sort of open source project, you start to shift from initial implementation to a process which is much more driven by the community starting to steer the functionality. So I think a good example is just look at how Apple manages the Webkit development process. Google, Nokia, a number of other parties, even individuals, if a 17-year-old hacker proves some competence in driving WebKit modifications and improvements, they'll be knighted as somebody who can contribute their code back to the WebKit system. So once we open source it, it'll very much be driven as an open source project, and I think WebKit is one of the model examples I look at how we'll probably structure things. There were 4 OEMs and ODMs who announced day one back in last November who were part of the alliance. As you can imagine, since that time, that number's probably grown in terms of people who've shown interest in building phones based on Android, not shrunk. So, and I myself have seen Android prototypes from every one of the OEMs and ODMs who announced as part of our project, and if you go on the web, you can actually see more devices from people who we're not even working with who started to port Android to other platforms. So, we've said there'll be, we'll launch our first handset in the second half of this year. My belief is by the end of 2009, there will start to be a lot of phones that are leveraging Android, but I can't quantify a lot. I think, you're certainly right. There's iPhones exist today. There's a development kit for it. Part of it is what kind of app you want to build. There are just certain apps you can't build on an iPhone. They don't let you do multi-process things. They don't let your app run in the background after you switch from one app to another. There's a lot. You can't interpret things. You can't have interpretive languages in your apps on an iPhone. There's a lot of restrictions. So you should first look and see, does the iPhone allow me to do what I want to do? Ultimately, my belief is any startup company or company that's trying to build a popular app will see that app on both platforms. I mean, they're both very contemporary programming environments. As long as somebody cleanly architects their system and uses contemporary programming techniques, it shouldn't be too hard to maintain multiple versions of successful apps across both iPhone and Android. I mean, ultimately, Steve Jobs just has a different goal than we do, and so there will be a more focused market with one manufacturer, Apple, shipping iPhones to people who want that high-touch experience. Android will be on 12-key feature phones as well as high-end smartphones, slide-out 40 keyboard, just be a much larger variety of phones in the long run. We've certainly been talking to the carriers. They see the momentum in developers, and we've been talking to the carriers about ways of making the best-in-class apps available to the broadest number of people. So Google will most likely play a role in that, and will help facilitate the delivery of applications to end users. Again, I think if we do that, the carriers are our partners, so we'll probably be doing that in partnership with them, which could simplify billing and other aspects to the extent that we can integrate with them. But so we'll be facilitating that. We'll probably be doing it in a way that doesn't bypass them, but that in some way, lets them be a part of the process. But the goal is to also not have them erect walls. We can't control that. It's an open platform. So if a carrier does want to still limit and require signatures for the phones on their network and limit that, they can do that. However, I know there will be carriers who don't. I know that there will be carriers who will work with us, and any app that's developed will make that app discoverable and available. And I can guarantee you, if in every market there's at least one carrier that's doing that, it will be hard for other carriers to block that same level of openness. But, we're still working out the details.